Gather around. It's time for some concert stories. KMFDM were supposed to go on the Industrial Strength Tour with Frontline Assembly and Ministry in 2020. That show kept getting rescheduled because of COVID. Eventually, KMFDM couldn't make the tour because of travel restrictions, and Frontline Assembly just got dropped. So the Industrial Strength Tour ended up with Melvins and Corrosion of Conformity. KMFDM did a tour for their Hyena album, and they were coming to Carrboro, North Carolina. That was a weird day in general. Early in the day, some criminal who was in trouble for something drug-related was hiding in my yard. The law showed up at my house after he was gone, and I had to talk to them. I got to the venue a couple hours before it opened to see if I could hear the band sound check. A couple was fighting in the parking lot, hands making contact. Minutes later, the cops showed up to bust their asses. Only one person I knew showed up to KMFDM, and we were just chatting about life in the front row, one-on-one. We were also being as immature as humanly possible, cracking jokes, showing memes, and telling stories that you probably wouldn't tell your family. The barrier in front of the stage had googly eyes attached, so among the childish jokes that evening was me sticking my middle finger between the eyes. It was funnier than it had a right to be. Anyway, KMFDM played half the new album, but also played some favorites like Megalomaniac, A Drug Against War, Godlike, and Son of a Gun. Sasha at one point lit a cigarette while he was behind a synthesizer. I could smell it from 10 feet away. Suddenly I remembered seeing Al Jorgensen smoking on stage when I saw Ministry in 2018. KMFDM put on a fun show, and given that I had been listening to them since 2016, it was worth the wait. KMFDM always had a reputation for meeting their fans after shows, so I went to the tour bus to grab a picture with Sasha. Their roadie, Pedro, was nice enough to take the picture. The cologne I was wearing that night was Very Sexy for Him by Victoria's Secret. As we were taking the picture, Sasha, with his German accent, told me, "You smell good." That was nice. Just a few years earlier when I saw NS's solo band and got a picture with him, he remarked, "Oh, your hair is so fluffy and beautiful," and he kissed my hair as we took the picture. There must be a common theme with KMFDM thinking I'm suave. Back to Sasha. I told him he put on a great show, and then I remarked about the cigarette on stage, saying how you never really see any bands do that now. He was like, "Yes, American spirits." Another fan standing nearby was like, "Ooh, fancy." Anyway, I thanked him and wished him good luck on the rest of the tour. There was a show flyer on the door, and someone at the venue gave me permission to take it home. So I had it laminated. But the library I had it taken to did it wrong. The laminating sheet wasn't thick enough, and the flyer curled up inside it. So I took a heat gun to peel it apart, which kinda roughed up the flyer slightly. After that painstaking process was over, I went to Office Depot so they could laminate it. And what do you know? The sheet was thick enough, and there were no issues. In fact, I think that the slight roughing up just adds to the charm. It's fitting for a band like KMFDM. Industrial Strength Flyer. Goatwhore and GWAR toured together in June 2022. I, of course, was excited to see GWAR, as the new Dark Ages was coming out around that time. I'd always heard good things about Goatwhore as a live band, so I was ready to be slain by both bands. I had some patches made by Goatwhore's merch guy, Patrick, so I made sure to say hello once the show was over. Necrogoblin was a fun time, but Goatwhore brought it the fuck on like Donkey Kong that night in Charlotte. So heavy, so much stage presence, and so much whammy bar abuse by Sammy. I even caught one of Sammy's picks. Such a great performance. On GWAR's end, Blothar announced that he caught COVID, so he wasn't going to be with the band that night. I'd never seen a bad show from GWAR, but I knew that this was going to be interesting. So, after Goatwhore left the stage, I waited. And the wait was made even longer by the music on the PA. Whoever was running the sound thought it was a good idea to have Iron Maiden's The Evil That Men Do playing on a loop, over and over, for 30 minutes. It was such a seamless loop, too. A few minutes went by and I didn't even notice the song started over. At first I thought, I forgot how long the song was. But after about 3 plays of The Evil That Men Do, I was over it. I even said to the guy next to me, "I wonder if the evil that men do lives on and fucking on." That was a long 30 minutes. But then I thought, it could be worse. It could be the 6 Feet Under version that's playing for 30 minutes. For the uninitiated, when you listen to 6 Feet Under's version, it starts off with the music sounding pretty good. You start to get into it, and then the vocals come in. It sounds like Freddy Krueger singing through Darth Vader's mask, but a couple of the wires are loose. And get this, the chorus has harmonized growls that change pitch. I imagine that rendition is playing on a loop in hell. So GWAR became known for having Black Sabbath War Pigs play before they get on stage. When Iron Maiden got interrupted by Black Sabbath, that was like drinking a gallon of water after eating a bowl of salt. Alas, GWAR got on stage and didn't decapitate anybody until the third song in. Some of the pre-recorded dialogue between songs was awkward because you heard Blothar's voice when Blothar wasn't there. It was interesting to hear the other guys take turns singing, but the whole experience just felt weird. That was also the first big tour they were able to do since COVID, so maybe they didn't have the budget for a lot of blood and monster effects. Even the merch booth was lacking. They didn't have that many shirts, and they didn't have the new album either. The new Dark Ages release on CD ended up getting delayed because of manufacturing stuff. So that was a first for me. A bad GWAR show. Given the circumstances, I cut them some slack. It seemed like everything was working against them all at once. Besides, a great night for GWAR is still better than most bands on their best nights. But Goatwhore was absolutely the best band that night. It turned me into a fan. In September 2018, Wintersun was coming to Greensboro. I didn't know this band, and I knew none of their songs, so I wasn't a fan. Yet. But I knew people who were talking about this show, and even at the show they were like, "Oh, I've been waiting 10 years to see Wintersun." It seemed like a big deal, and given how far between their tours to the United States were, I felt it was important to take advantage of the opportunity. What made me want to go even more was a hurricane that came through the area. Hurricane Florence, that is. It got so bad in some places that a lot of people couldn't drive. So, on the day of, it was up in the air whether the show was even going to happen. Close to the time, it was confirmed that it was still going on. So I got there early and chatted up a new friend in line. Sarah Longfield and Nabe Leviscaris were the openers. Sarah's skills on the guitar were on point, but I remember her drummer being a monster. I knew Sarah from YouTube, but was completely new to Nabe Leviscaris. They made a fan out of me that night. Beautiful songs, great energy, and there was even a moment of humor. One of the songs began with a violin solo. While Tim was playing the violin, someone in the crowd shouted something funny. It cracked everybody in the audience up, and it even cracked Tim up. He giggled it off, made the quiet gesture with his finger, and continued playing. For some bands, doing that would not end so gracefully. Wintersun had a colorful stage setup, and when they started playing, it was electric. The overall mood was already great because of the first two acts, but Wintersun made everybody forget about their troubles. Since this was my first time hearing or seeing anything of them, I didn't quite know what to expect, but I was happy I made it. There were 4 set lists on the stage, which were handed out to a few ravenous fans in the front row. But after the band left the stage, then came a bunch more set lists that were just being handed out to people. Even Wintersun knew it was special. Since they now won my respect, I thought it would be cool to try to meet or get a picture with someone in the band. After the show, I waited by the bus with a few other people. It was lightly raining, and a few people were there just to meet Yari. But Yari wasn't around, so some of those people left. However, Teemu showed up and was able to have a couple pictures taken, with his snack included. But for a good while, a small number of us were gathered, chatting it up with Asim. Topics ranged from the different countries he lived in, as well as the legality of not wearing a seatbelt in other countries. He discussed the strengths of places like Germany, and mentioned that every country is going to have things that you like about them, and things that you don't like about them. However, he preferred living in Finland because the music and art culture was so vibrant. He was also talking about how when he played shows in different countries, there would be big crowds of people waiting at the tour bus, but in America, a lot of those crowds were smaller. After a while, it was late, and we were all tired of getting rained on, so we got our pictures and went our separate ways. So, not only was I touched by metal, but I was able to participate in a multicultural connection after the show. It doesn't get much better than that. Slayer hit Charlotte in 2018 in the first wave of their farewell tour. I was excited to go, as Testament, Anthrax, and Behemoth were openers. I was also meeting up with a woman from out of state. We wouldn't become official until later that year, but I was meeting her mom for the first time at the show. They had hotel rooms booked for the occasion. Separately. So let's just say that it was going to be a great evening with the music, and hopefully there'd be an enjoyable after party. With the drive being over 2 hours, it was a hot day in June. I had the windows rolled down, the sun was bright, and sweat burned my eyes. The highway had a detour through China Grove, so there was a small delay. Unbeknownst to me, I was approaching a hilly intersection. I was going the speed limit and didn't really see the traffic light until the last second. So with my burning eyes and me daydreaming about the things that I was hoping to do in the hotel room that evening, this intersection got the best of me. I tried to brake in vain, the tires squealed loudly, and of all the trucks that I could have rear-ended, it was a company truck. A young guy was driving, and the damage was so minor that he said, "Look, if this were my truck, we'd be walking away. But my boss wants me to get the cops involved so we can fill out a report." This not only killed my buzz on the way to the show, but it made us all a bit late. I was meeting them at the hotel and we all drove together in her mom's truck. We ended up missing the first few minutes of Testament. I was disappointed in Anthrax's sound mix and didn't care about seeing Lamb of God. But Slayer played the songs that I wanted to hear. I saw a lot of people I knew and I had a great time. My friend's mom got piss-ass drunk at the show and drove us drunk back to the hotel. I didn't realize she was drunk until we got on the highway and she was swerving. And I got nervous and angry. If I'd known that she was going to drive drunk, I would have gotten an Uber or driven myself to the show. It put myself and others in danger for no good reason. Given how outside factors like family alcohol consumption affected the relationship that would form later that year, as well as the girlfriend's own many issues, this first encounter with her mother should have been an omen. Needless to say, that relationship came to an end, debatably later than it should have, but you live and learn. I was also found at fault for the truck accident. Although, the truck wasn't the only thing that I wrecked that day. But my respect for Slayer never waned. They brought appropriate aggression and enthusiasm for my first time seeing them on their farewell tour. Fucking Slayer. Ghoul and GWAR went on tour together in 2017. Doyle was on that tour too, though Doyle couldn't make the Greensboro date. US Bastards was the opener, with GWAR's Brent Purgeson on guitar. 2 sets a night. What a trooper. But hey, Ghoul and GWAR, 2 of my favorite bands playing the same show. The guy who got me into underground metal played drums for 2 Ghoul shows. His old band's guitar player ended up in Ghoul after that band had split up. So there were connections from the past at play here. Especially since I'd already met the guitarist in 2015 at another Ghoul show. I messaged him saying that I was going to be there, and he was nice enough to put me on the guest list. But this was Ghoul, a band that I felt strongly about. I wanted to do something nice for them. They were playing at Arizona Pete's in Greensboro. I got to the venue a couple hours before it opened. Sure enough, there was Dissector in the parking lot. We shared a hug and chatted for a minute, and I asked him what kind of beer the band drank. He said, "Oh, we mostly just drink shitty beer." And with that, I said, "I'll be right back," and I ran to my truck. I pretty much sped to the nearest Little Caesars to buy 3 of their pepperoni pizzas. I then drove to the gas station closest to the venue, again, faster than what was responsible, and in between waiting at long stoplights, putting me even more on edge, ready to give a gift to this band. Having no knowledge of beer, I bought a case of Budweiser, and then I finally pulled into the venue. I saw the band walking through the parking lot, but before they could get too far, I grabbed the pizzas and the beer and ran up to them. I said, "Gentlemen, thank you for the years of entertainment and enhancing my life." They were all excited, and we went back to their bus to feast. Ross Sewage remarked how Little Caesars reminded him of watching Evil Dead 2 when he was a teenager. And we just talked for a good while, about other bands in the scene, about Dissector's past band and some of their adventures, briefly about his day job, about labels and making money in metal, and other stuff. But this night worked out great because since Doyle wasn't playing, that meant that Ghoul got a longer set. At some point I went inside to check out US Bastards. They played a good set. Then Ghoul got on stage and did their soundtrack, unmasked, so most people didn't know it was them. I shouted, "Fucking metal!" A reference to a song by Dissector's old band. He giggled at that. And when Ghoul finally got on stage, they roared. An ultimate display of what a thrash metal show should be, complete with costumed monsters and flutes being sprayed at the audience. Yep, the night was going to be full of that. And in GWAR's case, The Blood of Gods was brand new, so they played the entire album, plus a few fan favorites. Blothar even played bass for a little bit. But GWAR was an almost constant stream of creatures getting hacked and blood being sprayed. I mingled after the show near Ghoul's bus. I'd mentioned earlier to Dissector about the possibility of shooting a video with them and having them kill me. He said if no one else is down, I'll do it, but we'll see what happens by the end of the night. Well, everyone got involved, and I was murdered by Ghoul.
So anyways, I was talking to this girl that I knew at PS105.
Gnarly friggin' show tonight, dudes!
The other three guys rolled back, and I said goodbye to Dissector. With the goodbye message, I reiterated the point earlier in the evening about Ghoul being a positive thing in my life. That whole night was surreal. The picture of me with the band was on my laptop screen for years. One of the best nights of my life. Thank you for listening. And grind on. Fucking